What I'd like to do now is turn it over for the group to ask some specific questions of our two speakers and have a conversation about this. Still, mindful that we're talking about this teacher shortage crisis. Lena.
Yeah, uh, 69 million new teachers. That's a
Yeah,
huge number.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like
yeah.
so 2016. I bet the number of teachers that we lack now is bigger, but that's
Yes.
how I am. So what was the plan and what is the plan and who does anything about it?
What a good question, Lena. I think that someone asked me, a journalist, in fact, this week, said, if we've known this, why have we not done anything? And I said, have we known about climate change? And I think
Right.
it's there's the evidence. I think it's a challenge because when UNESCO raises something like this, of course, it's up to individual nations to decide how they're going to, if they have the resources to address this. And the complexity is just in my own, I live in the state of Victoria, as you can see on the Padlet map, right down, almost south, apart from Tasmania. And the government here has fairly produced reports saying we don't have a problem because, look, this is the amount of people we're preparing. This is the amount of people that are retiring. With natural attrition, it looks like it'll be okay. But that doesn't account for the realities of things like difficult places where teachers won't naturally go and teach unless they are given particular incentives and supports to do so. So there's a challenge. We have a federal system in Australia, so each state and territory has its own government. And even though we have a federal government across all of Australia, each of our states and territories are making their own decisions. Now, this is reproduced, obviously, in great smorgasbord of arrangements around the globe. So we haven't had a coordinated approach to this, and I think the nature of politics means that we haven't had bipartisan agreement across, because, I can tell you what happens here is that we have a change of government and often the stationery for the education department will change. Everything will change as a new government puts its own particular perspective on the very important portfolio of education. Now, the political cycle being what it is, we're in this situation, which has been exacerbated by COVID, exacerbated by teachers really burning out, having to try and teach with their own children, amongst them, all of these things that we know. So there's many reasons, but I think there's some of the reasons why we're in this situation.
A couple of years ago, I looked into, there was one African state, I forgot which one it was, just to pick out an example in Africa and then I also in Iraq. And in Iraq, I think it was, they had a concept called mud schools, which were schools that were in such poor areas that any kind of water was just on the ground. There was no plumbing, and the schoolhouse was in mud. And the African country, and I forgot which one it is. I mean, the population growth completely outpaced the number of teachers that they educate. I mean, and the big news was that I don't know, UNESCO or somebody else had donated like $1 billion. It was like, whoa, money. And then when you looked into how much money it would cost to build schools and educate teachers and, actually put teachers on the ground in that country, it was like 10% of the number of kids that is born every year. I mean, it was the population growth and the number of teachers that are educated are just two different curves. And so that's why I assume that the 69 millions may be closer to 169 millions if we're talking 25 kids in a classroom, and with somebody who's qualified to be there.
I was just going to add, is Larissa's a place that doesn't have crazy population growth, and even there they have challenges. And yeah, and then if you go and look at a place like
Exactly.
you're talking about, it's like, what in the world are we going to do?
Yeah, no, that's a point absolutely well made. And we are a huge, physically, geographically, a huge country with really difficult terrain. And so schools are remote. They can only, some schools can only be, accessed via boat. There's a whole range of, or plane, there's a whole range of challenges, but absolutely we don't have the population density or, development that is happening in other countries. And yet these issues that we see globally being surfaced are being surfaced here as well. And another, key part of this is teachers teaching. It's one thing to have enough teachers, Lena, but then the other issue is teachers. We've got teachers teaching out of field, constantly across, in particularly in very challenging places to teach, places that haven't received the resourcing that they need. And so that's, we're at the first stage of getting enough teachers, but then the next one is actually, well, who should be in front of these young people, with what kind of preparation? It's a major issue that governments can no longer, that they just have to pay attention to.
Any other questions? I would think.
Yes, I have a question for Kyosuke. Do I pronounce your name right, Kyosuke?
Yes, very good.
Thank you. I visited Japan once, and I noticed that many people work late hours. Do teachers work more than the average people with a job in Japan?
Yes, actually, I guess it's teachers are longest working hours compared to other jobs, even in Japan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, overall, overall working condition is like seen as a big problem in Japan, because in other area, not in teaching jobs, Japanese work so hard and very long hours, and maybe there are some news that people jumped in front of train or something because they work so hard and they try to escape from the reality. Yeah, so yeah, it's global, like it's globally known, unfortunately. But yeah, but even in Japan, even in other jobs in Japan, teaching at school is longest, I guess.
Oh, okay. What makes people choose to become a teacher then in Japan?
It's kind of difficult question. Yeah, but because in Japan, if you are a teacher, it's very unemployed. Once you become a teacher, you can continue teaching as a whole life, even though you need to work so hard and longer hours, but your salary is stable and you get unemployed, not so much.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask a question as well, please, Kyosuke-san? And
yes.
That is, I've worked in the Japanese education system myself, and I've seen firsthand exactly the experience that you talk about particularly among fresh graduates, who when they enter the high schools to teach, they're really at the bottom of the ladder. And so it's not only a question of, I think there are a few things, obviously the teaching load, and the many other responsibilities, just for the sake of others on the call. When we talk, certainly in English, when we talk about club activities, those things sound like something which are kind of fun or something which are a nice added extra. In Japan, club activities are something which are taken very, very seriously. It's a lot of pressure and a lot of organization, a lot of time is required by those teaching staff who are responsible for it, and also placed on students too, particularly the senior students. And it's almost part of the socialization into Japanese society and Japanese culture, part of the club aspect. So that's one thing. But the question that I had really, Kyosuke, was, I've seen Japanese elementary education focuses very much on educating the whole person. And as soon as students enter into junior high school, I've seen otherwise lively students, young children with a real passion for learning and a passion for life, sort of have their souls destroyed within 1 or 2 semesters as they enter the exam testing environment. And I wonder, in your perception, why there's not an extension of the type of person building that we see in Japanese elementary education into junior and senior high school.
So could you rephrase the question, because I didn't get it?
Certainly. So I see elementary school education in Japan as something very positive, and I see students come out of elementary education with a real passion for life and passion for learning. What changes between elementary school and junior and senior high school? What is it that changes in the school environment and the school culture?
That is a good question, actually, because there are many students who love to go to elementary school, but even they loved to go to elementary school, once they become a junior high student, they hate going to school. That's often happens in Japan. To answering the question, for elementary school in Japan, freedom is very respected in student. So, but since we have entrance exam to university or high school, which are so fierce competition as well. So once you become a junior high school student, teacher's way of mind or school way of mind is how to teach effectively so that student can pass the entrance exam. So, input is very respected in junior high, but in elementary school, there are some freedom or maybe creativity for students in each lessons are respected. So students enjoy learning in elementary, but once you become junior high, fun is not important compared to how to pass the entrance exam. Yeah, that is the one reason students hate learning in junior high. And also junior high is kind of preparation for being an adult in Japan. So teachers' way of thinking is how to teach to be how to teach social code, for example, or how to teach keeping the rule in society. That's a way of mind in junior high. So students get so stressed out. They want to do something more free or creatively, but those kind of ideas are not respected compared to elementary school teachers. I think that's the reason.
Thank you very much.
It's heartbreaking. It's just, having a child that loves to learn and then you put them into a different system and it's just unbearable.
Actually, I have a very younger brother, and he is for second grade in junior high, and he loved going to elementary school. But after he became junior high, he hates going to school because of competition in exams. Then he often skips going to school. Yeah, that happens for my brother as well.
I think this is the bigger problem of, neoliberalism and high stakes testing and a system which values the opposite to Bildung, really, that values a particular form of achievement and is prepared to sacrifice, the whole development.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, and I think that's what makes building such an attractive concept. Is I think we need new grand narratives. We need new understandings of society and what society should be, you know, aiming to achieve. What the a reassessment of what we really value, and that's one of the things that brings me here today, at least.
Larissa, how do people think in Australia about these things in general? Are there more people who think like this, or are you the only one?
Around the whole education?
Yeah, the things we are talking about now,
Yes.
that it should change.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, there's been sustained, well, certainly from academics, and I think from parents, and I think, you know, there's a great understanding of the limitations of the system. One of my colleagues said, you know, you put people in a game and then they end up playing it, and it's how to stop playing this game and how to have other measures that we don't. And I know at our university and others that we are seriously taking the question of what does a full and rich education look like? And this has been something, you know, the university has been committed to, but in this move towards, you know, how do we rethink some of those key ideas is a really important thing for all of us to be doing. But of course, you know, we have a system in place and we have understandings of measurement, and we value things that can be measured. And we, by I mean, you know, globally, we value things that we can measure in certain ways. And so you know, I think that's to have a different narrative. So Caleb, who just said that then, is really important. But it is that needing of having a group and a global conversation about changing the narrative that is vital at this time. But I don't, yes, to answer your question, I think both universities and you know, there's a lot of desire and recognition of this, the need for this, I think. And as I sort of said at the start of my part of the talk, you know, we as a colonized nation, Australians are increasingly understanding knowledges about relationality and connection and the interconnection of people and land that comes from Indigenous understandings that give us a real way of shaping and having these conversations, and, you know, seeing this as central to education.
And does it resonate in your government too?
Well, I think it appears to resonate more with our new government than perhaps it has with the previous government. We have so there's a statement around Indigenous sovereignty and value that our new Prime Minister confirmed and affirmed moments with him coming into office. So there are many conversations now happening around in these spaces. So yes, but it is and because, as I mentioned, our governments in this country, we have layers. You know, we have our state governments, which have significant power. In fact, they have power for the education for, you know, government schools in their state. It's those schools that are overseen by the state. So, you know, it's not a one size fits all. You know, it's a complex political environment.
Right. Well, the question could be, how do we get it more resonating with our governments? This whole theme.
Yes.
Kyosuke, in Japan, is there any interest from the side of the government for these things?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes, actually, you know, the idea of Japanese Ministry of Education is the almost same as other countries, like respecting more creativity student or logical thinking, not like just taking test for good grades. Yeah, so the idea is, you know, going to the right way, I guess. But in the reality, as I mentioned, you know, teachers are understaffed. So even though, like government says, teachers should change your teaching this way, but teachers cannot because they are understaffed, and they don't need enough time to learn something new to make a better change. So like the reality and ideal, you know, there is a gap between them. Yeah.
I think it's also compounded by demographics because, you know, Japan has an aging population, which means a lot of teachers are, you know, my age and older. And there's also a seniority-based system in Japan, which means that young teachers don't have, even if they have great ideas and, you know, a lot of energy and desire to change, they don't have the political power within schools to actually make that impact, because the locus of power rests with, you know, those senior teachers who are, you know, reluctant to change in most cases. Would you say that that's a fair assessment, Kyosuke?
Say again?
Would you think that that's a fair assessment, that the older teachers tend to hold the power in the schools?
No.
Oh, really?
You know, when I went to Finland as a study abroad, I was so surprised. You know, there is not like a you know, difference of voice between older teacher and younger teachers. They have same right and they debate as they are on the same page. Yeah, but in Japan, you know, maybe because of Buddhism, you know, in the Buddhism we are respecting older people. This idea, you know, affects to the, you know, working environment as well. And as Sareb mentioned, it's difficult for younger people to have a power of voice to influence the whole working environment.
I really appreciated both presentations, and especially when Kyosuke mentioned his recommendation, you know, for government to invest more resources on teacher well-being. And I think that is really, really critical and crucial if we are to retain teachers in the system. But, you know, I come from Bhutan, and we are actually engaging in a lot of activities and programs that look at, you know, bringing the idea of well-being and wellness into the school system, both for students and for teachers. But as a school that is actually very much embracing well-being, the stress still continues, because as long as the system of testing and examinations and the demands that are placed, you know, for ranking and achievement, that still remains. So as long as that does not change, I think teachers, no matter how much they practice well-being, they will continue to feel the pressure, and I think they would eventually leave the system. So the bigger question I would imagine is, especially with the pandemic, it's not just about tweaking, it's not just about resources even, I feel. It has to do with like just, it has shown us, you know, in Bhutan for a whole year, the schools were closed for the elementary grades, right up to 8th grade from kindergarten. For a whole year, we were doing online teaching for these group of students. And I think that's where at least I realized that, you know, the conventional form of schools, you know, where children come to school in the classrooms and have all these curriculum and testing and all of that, I think is now something that needs to be revisited, because so much of the learning could happen independently on the internet. The children can get all kinds of lesson plans. You know, it's no longer the case that every knowledge and you know, your education you can get in a school. You can get it anywhere. And I think schools have to be now places where social interaction, that is where you need to promote these things, you know, activities like games and culture and music and all of that. Even that you can learn on the internet. But I think schools now have to be happier places, not where children are coming to take exams and competing with each other. And it's all human imposed. So I really feel like from the factory model of education that seemed to be so relevant in that day, times have changed so drastically. But whenever we say we are rethinking education, we're really just tweaking here and there, changing some questions here and there. That is not, we really need to transform education to the point that, we should not have like 5-day school week. I mean, I think somebody or people have to come together to really see what would be the new paradigm in education. I think just asking for more resources and also putting like just the academic, the sciences and the math and everything on top of the totem pole, and arts and music and sports, things that children really, just take to so naturally, are given second-class status. They don't even feature in the report card. How do you appreciate a child who is so good and brings all kinds of strengths to the table that they can be productive citizens, but they're already disregarded because they don't make the grade. So I really feel there's a far, far bigger question to education now than we've ever faced before. And the pandemic has shown us that. And that's why teachers, I think if the system continues, the teachers feel overwhelmed because they need to prove their worth, but they're having to adjust and adapt over and above all the other demands that are placed on them. So I think Bildung, we really need to get all our heads together to rethink and reimagine education that just goes out of this world, I think, in the way we reimagine. This is what I would like to submit here. Thank you, Robert.